On that same day, though, that we're going to get Tulsi Gabbard's confirmation hearing on Thursday, we're going to have the confirmation hearing for Trump's choice to be FBI director. Now, this is a job that should not be open because FBI directors have 10-year terms. FBI Director Chris Wray has 3 years left in his 10-year term, but he inexplicably decided to resign before his term was up, which had purely and only the effect of making it easier for Trump to install someone new in the job. That was nice of him. But now, thanks to Chris Wray, here we are. As January 6th pardon recipients start to get arrested for other crimes after Trump pardoned them, as one January 6th pardon recipient was killed in an altercation with police at a traffic stop yesterday in Indiana. As the Justice Department today starts to investigate its own prosecutors for having had the temerity to bring charges against January 6th rioters in the first place. Let's just take this one day at a time. Let's just take a second to reflect on who Trump is trying this week to install as head of the FBI, as head of the 38,000 men and women of the nation's premier federal law enforcement agency with all of its immense power and responsibility.
We will go out and find the conspirators, not just in government, but in the media. Yes, we're going to come after the people in the media who lied about American citizens, who helped Joe Biden rig presidential elections. We're going to come after you. Whether it's criminally or civilly, we'll figure that out. But yeah, we're putting you all on notice. And
that is Kash Patel, Donald Trump's pick to run the FBI, describing his plans for the second Trump administration. That was in an interview in 2023. You might have heard about that quote. You might have heard that quote. You might have also heard him describing his plans for the FBI's headquarters building in Washington, D.C.
I'd shut down the FBI Hoover building on day one and reopening the next day as a museum of the deep state.
Well, hey, at least he is pro-museum. So, those are two of the relatively recent statements by Kash Patel that I think have captured people's imagination, that have received a lot of traffic since Trump shockingly named him as his choice to run the FBI. But there's been such a fire hose of news and stuff to keep up with all of these radical nominees. This 1 week thus far of really radical action by the new president and his appointees. I mean, there's been so much that, some of the truly wildly inappropriate or unqualified or at least controversial nominees like Doug Burgum at the Interior Department or Kristi Noem at Homeland Security or even John Ratcliffe at CIA. I mean, they've just been sliding through without much attention, even though they deserve attention. But, people only have so much bandwidth, right? It's understandable. It's regrettable. It's lamentable. But it's understandable. That said, for the FBI specifically, given what Trump is already doing with law enforcement and the Justice Department and the pardons of all the people from January 6th, this is just one that I feel like we can't afford to let melt into the sauce, right? Let's just look at a few other things about Kash Patel ahead of his confirmation hearings this week. Here's one thing. This is not actually the first time Donald Trump has tried to install Kash Patel in a high-ranking position in the FBI. In the final months of Trump's first term, you might remember that Trump reportedly tried to make Kash Patel FBI Deputy Director. That effort did not go well. Trump's Attorney General at the time, Bill Barr, says he told the White House Kash Patel would be made FBI Deputy Director, quote, over my dead body. Bill Barr wrote in his memoir, quote, Patel had virtually no experience that would qualify him to serve at the highest level of the world's preeminent law enforcement agency. The very idea of moving Kash Patel into a role like this showed a shocking detachment from reality. And that was when Trump wanted him as the number 2 guy in the FBI, let alone the director. But okay, that's just one senior Trump administration official. Bill Barr doesn't have that much credibility with any group of Americans at this point in our political moment in America. Set aside Bill Barr. What about other Trump appointees who worked with Kash Patel? Well, Trump's deputy national security advisor who worked closely with Kash Patel, he had this to say, quote, "He's absolutely unqualified for FBI director. He is untrustworthy. It is an absolute disgrace to American citizens to even consider an individual of this nature." That's Trump's deputy national security advisor. And this, he's untrustworthy. This is kind of a theme in descriptions of Kash Patel from people specifically who worked with him in the first Trump term. Several former Trump officials say that Kash Patel had a tendency to embellish, to mislead. I think the word you're looking for here is lie about important stuff. John Bolton, who you just saw on this evening with Jen Psaki here on MSNBC, he was Trump's national security advisor, so therefore effectively Kash Patel's boss when he was at the National Security Council. He described him tonight on MSNBC with Jen Psaki as a, quote, climbing weed. He says Kash Patel falsely claimed to have been in charge of a whole directorate at the National Security Council when he was not. Bolton wrote in his book, quote, "His puffery was characteristic of the resume inflation we had detected when Trump pressed him on us. We found he had also exaggerated his role in cases he worked on as a Justice Department lawyer. Given the sensitivity of the National Security Council's responsibilities, problems of credibility or reliability would ordinarily disqualify any job applicant. We found he had exaggerated his role in cases he worked on as a Justice Department lawyer." Bolton, I said he said that in that book. That was actually in an op-ed specifically opposing Kash Patel for this FBI job. He exaggerated his role in cases he worked on as a Justice Department lawyer, as well as exaggerating his position in the National Security Council. What did he exaggerate about his time in the Justice Department? What was that?
I was the main justice lead prosecutor for Benghazi for a while.
No kidding.
Actually, yes, kidding. Hopefully he was kidding, because it's definitely not true. New York Times, quote, "Mr. Patel has repeatedly claimed that he was the lead prosecutor in the government's pursuit of the perpetrators of the 2012 attack on a U.S. diplomatic compound in Benghazi, Libya, which killed 4 Americans. In reality, quote, he had no role on the Benghazi trial team. The pretrial investigation was handled by a team led by the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington. In his capacity as a junior prosecutor, Mr. Patel routed arrest warrants and the like up the chain for approval." Quote, "Mr. Patel took a junior position in the counterterrorism section in late January 2014, well after the Benghazi investigation started. He left the department in April 2017, about 6 months before the first Benghazi case went to trial." What was it that he said? He said, "I was the main justice lead prosecutor for Benghazi." Asked by Mother Jones Magazine about Kash Patel's claims to have led the Benghazi prosecution's efforts in D.C., a former FBI special agent who was on that investigation for years responded, quote, quote, "Oh my God, comma, no. Oh my God, no." Despite that, because sure, why not, a Trump transition spokesman recently insisted that Kash Patel was, in fact, assigned as the lead Benghazi prosecutor. Because that's their line, and they're sticking to it. Here's another one. A longtime Trump advisor tells The Atlantic magazine that, quote, he had been in Patel's presence more than once when Patel claimed he was the person who, quote, gave the order for U.S. forces to move in and kill the ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi in 2019. This despite the fact that the Baghdadi killing was, quote, an operation for which Patel, by his own admission, wasn't even in the Situation Room. Asked about this, Patel said through his spokesperson, Trump made that brave and courageous call. Yes, but what about the reports that you repeatedly claimed that you were the one who made the call, that you, quote, gave the order? What about that? On the issue of January 6th specifically, as the Justice Department today is trying to fire all the prosecutors involved in the federal January 6th case against Trump, as they are opening an internal investigation into the prosecutors who brought cases against the rioters at the Capitol. Have you ever heard what Kash Patel says himself about January 6th? About what that was? Well, first of all, I should tell you that Kash Patel is credited officially as the producer of the January 6th anthem, the rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner sung by a group of imprisoned January 6th defendants, overlaid with Donald Trump reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. He's the producer of that hot track. This is who Trump wants to be put in charge of the FBI. Kash Patel says it was the FBI that was behind January 6th in the first place.
What you need to show is whether or not the FBI and government agents were using undercover operatives and informants on the day of January 6th. So once you prove that, then you defeat the insurrection narrative with the FBI's own documentation. Forget what the videotape shows.
I started smirking and rolling my eyes. And what I meant to convey with that is, come on, we know they were involved.
No, look, I totally agree.
Though.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I know definitively. It looks like you have a preponderance of evidence suggesting there may have been federal law enforcement involved in making that thing happen.
I'll get you beyond a reasonable doubt.
Federal law enforcement involved in making that thing happen. No. I'll get you beyond a reasonable doubt. Meaning we'll criminally prosecute them for it, presumably, right? That is Kash Patel on a podcast, by the way, that according to a recent Justice Department indictment was secretly funded by Russian state media as part of a Kremlin influence operation. Neat. The host of that podcast has said if those allegations are true, he was deceived about the funding. But there he is with Kash Patel. The host says, hey, we know the FBI was involved in January 6th. Kash Patel says, I totally agree. The FBI helped make January 6th happen. I'll get you beyond a reasonable doubt. Now he's Trump's choice to lead the FBI.